I spent 2 years making myself small enough to fit inside my sister's charity, believing I was paying down a debt of kindness. I folded the laundry, bought the groceries, and stayed invisible. I didn't realize I was actually the villain in her story until I locked the front door for the last time. I checked my phone and saw her post, a photo of my empty bedroom captioned, "Finally, the freeloader is gone." That was when the real bill came due. The floorboards in the hallway outside my bedroom had a specific language, a sequence of groans and creaks that I had memorized over 730 days. If I stepped on the left side of the third plank, silence. If I put my weight on the center of the threshold, it snapped like a dry bone. I was moving boxes at 4 a.m, and my entire body was tensed in a permanent flinch, waiting for the sound that would wake the house. I did not want to wake the house. I did not want a conversation. I placed the last cardboard box by the front door, moving with the exaggerated slowness of a thief. Inside the box were the remnants of the life I had collapsed into 2 years ago: winter coats, a stack of paperback novels, and the few framed photographs I had turned face down on the dresser so I would not have to look at my own smiling reflection from before the fall. Standing there in the dark, I ran through the speech I had practiced in the shower for a week. It was a good speech. It was gracious. It acknowledged the generosity of my older sister, Morgan, and her husband, and it pivoted gently toward my own need for independence. I had planned to say, "Morgan, thank you for being my harbor in the storm." I had planned to hug her, perhaps shed a single, photogenic tear, and leave with my dignity intact. But as I looked at the dark outline of the kitchen island, the altar where I had sacrificed my autonomy every single morning, I knew I would never give that speech. If I spoke, my voice would shake. If I showed emotion, Morgan would tilt her head, narrow her eyes, and ask if I was having another episode. She would turn my gratitude into evidence of my instability. She would take my goodbye and rewrite it until it was an apology. So I chose silence. I chose the coward's exit, or perhaps the survivor's exit. I picked up the box, stepped over the treacherous third plank, and walked out into the cool. Pre-dawn air. The car was already packed. It was an older sedan, reliable but tired, much like its driver. I fit the last box into the trunk, closed it with a soft click, and got into the driver's seat. As I turned the key, I looked back at the house. It was a beautiful house, a sprawling suburban colonial with manicured hedges and a front porch that screamed American stability. It was the kind of house people aspired to own, the kind of house that appeared in commercials for life insurance. To me, it looked like a mouth that had finally decided to spit me out. I put the car in reverse and rolled down the driveway without turning on my headlights until I hit the street. As I drove away, the tightness in my chest began to loosen. Unspooling thread by thread, I was 33 years old. I had a degree. I had once had a career in logistics that paid $45,000 a year, enough to feel like I was going somewhere. Then came the layoff, the company pivot that eliminated my department in a single Tuesday afternoon email. I had savings. But then came the pain in my abdomen that I ignored until I passed out in a grocery store aisle. Emergency surgery, 4 days in the hospital, out of network. The bills didn't trickle in. They arrived in an avalanche. $7,000, $12,000. The numbers were so large they felt abstract, like distances to other planets. My savings evaporated in 3 months. My credit score, once a point of pride, began to look like a failing grade. That was when Morgan had called. "Come home," she had said. "It's silly for you to struggle. We have the guest room. Stay until you get back on your feet." It had sounded like love. It had sounded like family. I merged onto the highway, the streetlights rhythmically slicing through the darkness of the car's interior. I remembered the day I moved in. Morgan had hugged me, but her eyes were already scanning my bags, assessing how much space I would take up. The rules were never written down. There was no lease, no document I could point to and say, "This is what we agreed." The rules were invisible, suspended in the air like humidity. Rule 1. Gratitude must be performed daily. If I made coffee, I had to offer it to Morgan first. If she mentioned how high the electric bill was, I had to look down at the floor and apologize for my existence. Rule 2. I had no opinion. If Morgan and her husband argued about politics, or paint colors, or how to discipline their daughter, I was to be a piece of furniture. A nod was acceptable. A sentence was an intrusion. Rule 3. I was a guest who was also a servant. I drove through the city, watching the skyline turn purple with the coming sunrise. The memories of my contribution burned in my stomach. Morgan told everyone I was staying for free. She told our cousins, our aunts, the neighbors, Piper is staying with us while she sorts herself out. It's a lot. But what can you do? It's family. But I hadn't lived there for free. I had paid in ways that didn't generate a receipt. I was the one who did the grocery run every Tuesday and Friday. I used the card Morgan gave me. But whenever the total went over the budget she set, which was often, because she liked expensive organic produce and imported cheeses, I swiped my own debit card to cover the difference. $20 here, $50 there. I hid the receipts because I didn't want her to feel like she wasn't providing enough, and I didn't want her to accuse me of overspending. I was the one who picked up her daughter, Bella, from school every day at 3 o'clock. I was the one who helped with the dioramas and the math homework. I was the unpaid Uber driver for ballet and soccer, burning my own gas because asking for mileage reimbursement felt petty when I was sleeping under her roof. And then there was the cash. I remembered a Tuesday last winter. Morgan had been pacing the kitchen, slamming cabinet doors. She was talking loudly on the phone to the power company, her voice shrill with that specific suburban panic of someone who is living slightly beyond their means. She hung up and put her head in her hands. I had just cashed a small check from a freelance data entry gig, $200. I didn't hand it to her. I knew she would perform a refusal, then take it, then resent me for knowing she needed it. Instead, I waited until she went upstairs. I opened the junk drawer where she kept the household bills and tucked the cash inside an envelope marked urgent. I did that 5 or 6 times over 2 years, when the water bill was high, when the car insurance was due. I never said a word. I wanted to believe I was paying rent. I wanted to believe we were a team. I pulled into the parking lot of the complex where my new apartment was waiting. It was on the other side of town, in a neighborhood that Morgan would describe as sketchy, but I described as affordable. The building was a square brick block, uninspired and sturdy. I parked the car and killed the engine. Silence, real silence. I walked up the 2 flights of stairs to apartment 4B. The key turned in the lock with a satisfying grit. I pushed the door open. The apartment was small, a studio with a kitchenette that looked like it belonged in a boat, but it smelled like fresh paint and lemon cleaner. It smelled like mine. I spent the morning unpacking. I put my books on the built-in shelves. I made my bed with the sheets I had bought at a discount store. I set up my coffee maker. By noon, the place looked habitable. I sat on the floor, leaning back against the wall, and took out my phone. I hesitated. Social media had been a minefield for the last 2 years. Every time I logged on, I saw people from my old life getting promoted, buying houses, traveling to Italy. I saw my own stagnation reflected in their progress. But today felt different. Today, I had moved. I had momentum. I typed out a status update. I kept it brief. I kept it neutral. I stripped every ounce of drama out of the sentences until they were as flat as the linoleum floor I was sitting on. New chapter, grateful for support. Taking things one step at a time. I didn't tag Morgan. I didn't post a picture of the apartment. I just hit post. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I turned my phone face down on the floor, like it was a live wire that might spark and burn the building down. I made myself a sandwich. I organized my socks. I watched the sunlight move across the floorboards. For 3 hours, I was at peace. Then, around 2 in the afternoon, the phone buzzed, then it buzzed again. Then it began to vibrate continuously, a long, angry rattle against the floor. My stomach did a slow, sickening roll. I picked it up. Notifications were stacking up on the lock screen. likes, comments, but they weren't on my post. They were on a post by Morgan. I unlocked the phone and opened the app. There it was, right at the top of the feed. Morgan had posted a photo. It was a picture of the guest room I had just vacated. She must have taken it minutes after I left. The bed was stripped to the mattress. The curtains were drawn. The room looked stark, empty, and depressing. It looked like a cell. The caption read, "Finally, the freeloader is gone." There was a laughing emoji at the end, a bright, yellow, tear-filled laughing face that mocked every grocery run, every childcare pickup, every hidden $20 bill. I sat there, frozen. The air in my lungs felt like it had turned to glass. I scrolled down to the comments. This was the part that usually killed you, not the bullet, but the shrapnel. My Aunt Linda had commented, "About time. You have the patience of a saint." Morgan, a neighbor, a woman I had waved to every morning for 2 years, wrote, "I don't know how you did it. Honey, I would have kicked her out a year ago." My cousin Mike, "Does this mean we can finally come over for game night without the gloomy cloud in the corner?" And Morgan was liking every single one of them. She was replying with heart emojis and praying hands. She was performing her martyrdom for an audience of 300 friends and family members. I felt a wave of heat rise up my neck. My first instinct was to fight. I wanted to type out a list of everything I had done. I wanted to scream in all caps about the free babysitting, the cleaning, the emotional labor of managing her household while she played the overwhelmed mother. I wanted to burn it down, but I didn't type. My thumbs hovered over the screen, trembling. I remembered the look on Morgan's face whenever she felt challenged. The sudden, terrifying calm. The way she would twist reality until you were apologizing for something she did to you. If I commented, I would look defensive. I would look unstable. I would be proving her point. I took a deep breath. I counted to 10. I took a screenshot of the post. Then I opened the comments section and started screenshotting those, too. I captured Aunt Linda's praise. I captured the neighbor's cruelty. I captured every joke and every assumption. I stopped at one comment. It was from a man I didn't recognize. Someone named Greg who wasn't a family member but had a profile picture of a guy in sunglasses holding a fish. Greg wrote, "Good. Now you can refinance in peace." I stared at the words. Refinance in peace. It was an odd thing to say. Why would my presence prevent a refinance? I was a guest. I wasn't on the deed. I wasn't on the mortgage. My credit was ruined. Yes, but that was my problem, not hers. My financial radioactive decay shouldn't have affected the half-life of her home equity. I took a screenshot of Greg's comment. The phone rang in my hand, making me jump. The screen flashed a mom. I stared at it. For a split second, a child's hope flared in my chest. Mom saw the post. Mom is calling to tell me she loves me. Mom is calling to tell Morgan to take it down. I answered, "Hello?" "Piper," my mother said. Her voice was tight, low. It was her fixing-it voice. "I saw the Facebook thing." "Yeah," I said. "I saw it too." "Listen to me," she said, cutting me off. "Don't post anything back. Do you hear me? Don't make this worse." The hope in my chest died, instantly and completely. "Make it worse?" I asked, my voice sounding very far away. "Mom, she called me a freeloader. She posted a picture of my room. She's venting." "Piper," my mother sighed. "She's been under a lot of pressure. You know how she gets. She feels like she's been carrying the weight of the world. Just let her have this. If you argue, it's just going to tear the family apart for Christmas. Just apologize to her later and let it blow over." "Apologize?" I whispered. "For what?" "For whatever made her feel like she had to do this," my mother said, as if this was a reasonable sentence. "Just keep your head down. You're out now. Let's just move on." She didn't ask about the new apartment. She didn't ask if I had enough money for food. She just wanted the boat to stop rocking. The family had already chosen the version of events that kept their lives comfortable. Morgan was the saint. I was the burden. The script was written. "Okay, Mom," I said. "I won't post anything." Good girl, she said. I knew you'd be reasonable. She hung up. I sat in the silence of my new apartment. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the empty floor. I felt a coldness settling into my bones that had nothing to do with the temperature. They thought I was weak. They thought I was the good girl who would swallow the poison to keep the rest of them from getting sick. I looked at the screenshot again. Good. Now you can refinance in peace. Something scratched at the back of my brain. Humiliation was loud. It was distracting. It was smoke. But usually, when there was this much smoke, there was a fire. And in my family, fire burned on money. I stood up and went to my laptop. I set it on a moving box. I logged into my email. Then I stopped. When I had moved in with Morgan 2 years ago, I had lost my phone for a day during the chaos. I had used her computer to access my accounts. I had set her mobile number as a recovery contact for my email because I didn't have a phone at that moment. I had never changed it back. If she had access to my email, she had access to everything connected to it. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. I went into the security settings. The recovery number was still there. Her number. I deleted it. I changed the password to a random string of 18 characters that I wrote down on the back of a napkin. Then I went to the credit bureau websites. I hadn't looked at my credit report in a year because it was too depressing. But tonight, I needed to see. I initiated a freeze on Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. As I clicked through the screens, answering security questions about old addresses and car loans, I felt like a detective at a crime scene. I pulled the full report. I scrolled past the medical collections, past the closed credit cards from my old life, and then I saw it. 2 hard inquiries from 3 weeks ago. One was from a credit card company I had never banked with. The other was from a mortgage lender called Sunbelt Financial. I stared at the screen. I hadn't applied for a credit card. I certainly hadn't applied for a mortgage. I couldn't get approved for a library card right now, let alone a house. Why would a mortgage lender be running a hard check on my credit? I looked at the date of the inquiry. It was a Tuesday. I closed my eyes and tried to remember that Tuesday. I was at the house. Morgan had been home. She had been in a good mood that day. She had asked me for... What had she asked for? She had asked for a code. Piper, my Netflix is acting up. It says it sent a code to your phone since you're the primary on the family plan. What is it? I had looked at my phone. A 6-digit code had popped up. I had read it out to her. I opened my phone now and searched my messages. I found the text from the verification service. It didn't say Netflix. It just said, "Your verification code is 894022. Do not share this with anyone." I felt sick, physically sick. I opened a new tab on my browser. I went to Google Sheets. We had a shared spreadsheet called Household Expenses. I had created it when I first moved in. I used it to track the groceries I bought, the errands I ran. I wanted a record, mostly for my own sanity, to prove I was contributing. I searched for the file not found. I stared at the screen. I had updated that spreadsheet 4 days ago. Right before I told Morgan I had found an apartment, I went to the trash folder of the drive. Nothing. I went to the activity log of the shared drive. There it was. Household expenses. Permanently deleted by Morgan Flores. The timestamp was 8:15 a.m. on the morning after I told her I was moving out. She hadn't just deleted the file. She had scrubbed it. She wanted the record of my contributions gone. Why? If I was just a freeloader, the spreadsheet would prove her right. It would show zeros. But it didn't show zeros. It showed thousands of dollars of labor and goods. And now it was gone. I sat back, the light from the laptop screen illuminating my face in the darkening room. Outside, the city was waking up for the night. Sirens wailed in the distance. My sister didn't hate me. Hate is a hot emotion. Hate is impulsive. This wasn't hate. This was strategy. The Facebook post wasn't just about being mean. It was a preemptive strike. She was discrediting the witness. She was painting me as a leech so that if I ever complained about money, or if I ever asked questions about these credit inquiries, everyone would laugh. Oh, there goes Piper again, the unstable freeloader. trying to blame her saint of a sister. She was building a wall of social shame to hide something financial behind it. I looked at the napkin where I had written my new password. I wasn't going to comment on her post. I wasn't going to call my mother back and cry. I wasn't going to apologize. I was going to find out why a mortgage lender was looking at my ruined credit score, and why my sister needed me to be the villain of her story so badly that she would burn our relationship to ash to ensure it. I closed the laptop. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the dark, and for the first time in 2 years, I didn't feel grateful. I felt cold. And in the cold, I could think. The silence in my new apartment was distinct from the silence in my sister's house. At Morgan's place, silence was a held breath, a tension that meant she was either sleeping or plotting. Here, silence was just the absence of noise. It was neutral. It was indifferent. For the first 4 days, I lived in that silence like it was a convalescent home. I went to work at the logistics warehouse. I came home. I ate toast over the sink, and I sat on the floor with my back against the radiator. I cried, but only in the shower, where the sound of the water could drown out the pathetic, heaving sobs that felt less like sadness and more like the physical expulsion of 2 years of swallowed pride. I thought I could compartmentalize the shame. I thought I could leave the Facebook post and the freeloader narrative behind the locked screen of my phone, but the digital world has a way of leaking into the physical one. On Thursday, I was in the break room at work, stirring powdered creamer into lukewarm coffee. The warehouse was a cavernous place, loud with the beep of forklifts and the screech of packing tape, a good place to be invisible. I kept my head down, focusing on the swirl of white powder dissolving in the dark liquid. "Piper?" I froze. It was Sarah, a shift supervisor who had always been kind to me in a distant, professional way. I turned, forcing a smile. "Hey, Sarah, what's up?" She was holding her phone, her thumb hovering over the screen. She looked uncomfortable, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. I feel weird asking this, but it popped up on my People You May Know feed because we have mutuals." She turned the screen toward me. It was the post, the photo of my empty room, the caption. "Finally, the freeloader is gone." The laughing emoji seemed to vibrate on the screen. "Is this real?" Sarah asked. Her voice lowered to a conspiratorial whisper. "I mean, did your sister really post this about you?" My face burned. It wasn't just a blush. It was a full-body scorch. I felt the heat rise from my collarbone to my hairline. The humiliation wasn't private anymore. It was here, under the fluorescent lights, next to the vending machine. "It's complicated," I said, my voice sounding thin and brittle. "Family stuff. You know how it is." Sarah looked at me, and in her eyes, I saw the shift. Before, I was just Piper, the quiet worker who always hit her quotas. Now, I was Piper, the drama, Piper, the messy one, Piper, the freeloader who had to be evicted. "Right," Sarah said, pulling the phone back. "Sorry, people put everything online these days, huh? Just seemed harsh." "Yeah," I said. "It is." I walked back to my station, my hands shaking. I realized then that Morgan hadn't just insulted me. She had branded me. She had created a preemptive reputation that would walk into rooms before I did. That night, I stopped crying. Crying was a luxury for people who were safe. I wasn't safe. I was a target. I sat down at the small, wobbly card table I had bought from a thrift store and opened my laptop. I needed to stabilize. I needed to rebuild the foundation that had been eroded by 2 years of helping out. I started with the basics. I made a budget, rent, utilities, food, debt service. It was tight, suffocatingly tight. But the math worked if I didn't get sick, didn't need car repairs, and didn't buy anything that wasn't strictly necessary for survival. Next, I looked up therapy intake forms. I couldn't afford a private psychologist, but there was a sliding scale clinic downtown that took low-income patients. I filled out the application, pausing at the section for emergency contact. I left it blank. Then, I turned to the wreckage of my credit. I had already frozen the bureaus. but I needed to clean up the debris. I logged into the portal for the collection agency that held my old medical debt from the surgery. I had set up a payment plan 2 years ago and, to my knowledge, I had paid it off 6 months ago. I had the confirmation number written in an old notebook somewhere, but when the dashboard loaded, the balance wasn't zero, it was $450, and the status was reopened/new collection activity. I stared at the screen. My heart did that slow, heavy thud that I was beginning to recognize as the soundtrack of my life. I called the number on the screen, waiting through 20 minutes of hold music that sounded like distorted jazz. "This is Marcus," a tired voice finally said. "Account number?" I gave it to him. "I paid this," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I paid this in full 6 months ago. Why is it reopened?" "Let me look," Marcus said. I heard the click-clack of a keyboard. It looks like there was an adjustment based on an updated billing statement sent to the address on file. The mail was returned, so the account went into default on the remaining balance. "What address?" I asked. 124 Maple Street, he read. I frowned. Maple Street was an apartment I had lived in 5 years ago, long before the surgery, long before Morgan. "I haven't lived there in years," I said, "and I updated my address to my sister's house when I moved in. Why would it revert to an old address?" "We received an address update form," Marcus said. "Dated 3 weeks ago. I didn't send an update form," I said. "Can you send me a copy of that form?" "I can email the PDF," he said, sounding bored. 2 minutes later, the email arrived. I opened the attachment. It was a standard change of address form, scanned in low resolution. The handwriting was jagged, pressed hard into the paper. I looked at the signature at the bottom. Piper Flores. It wasn't my signature. My signature is loopy, cursive, a relic of Catholic school penmanship drills. This signature was blocky, rushed. The P was 2 separate strokes. The F was a sharp slash. It looked like someone trying to write my name from memory, doing it quickly so they wouldn't get caught. It looked like Morgan's handwriting when she wrote grocery lists in a hurry. Why? Why would she change my address to an old one? To make sure I didn't get the mail? To make sure the bill went into default so my credit would tank? "That's not my signature," I told Marcus. "You'll have to file a dispute," he said. "Send a notarized affidavit. We just processed the paper." I hung up. I printed the form. I put it in a manila folder. It was the first physical object in my new collection. The next morning, I took a long lunch break and drove to my bank. It was the branch I had used for a decade, the one near my old apartment, not the one near Morgan's house. I needed to see a human being. I needed to see someone who didn't know I was a freeloader. Mrs. Higgins was at the third window. She had dyed her hair a vibrant shade of auburn since I last saw her. She smiled when I walked up, but the smile faltered for a fraction of a second when she punched in my account number. "Piper," she said warmly. "Long time no see. How are you?" "I'm okay," I said. "I just moved. I wanted to make sure all my contact info is secure. I've had some weird activity." Mrs. Higgins tapped her keyboard. She frowned. "Well, we have the new apartment address you updated online yesterday. That looks fine." She hesitated. "There was that change request last month, though I assumed it was you, but it seemed odd at the time." "What change request?" I asked. My hands were gripping the counter edge so hard my knuckles were white. "The email address," she said. "On the 16th. It was changed to, let me see, maflores82gmail.com. Then it was changed back to your original email 2 days later. Maflores82. Morgan's personal email." "I didn't authorize that," I said. My voice was very quiet. Mrs. Higgins stopped typing. She looked up at me, her expression shifting from customer service polite to genuine concern. "You didn't?" It was verified through the 2-factor authentication. A code was sent to the mobile number on file. The memory hit me like a physical blow. The kitchen, the smell of rosemary chicken, Morgan standing by the island, phone in hand, looking casual, looking bored. "Piper, My Netflix is acting up. It says it sent a code to your phone since you're the primary. What is it? I had been washing lettuce. I hadn't even looked at the text. Just the preview bubble. Your verification code is... I gave her the code, I whispered. She told me it was for Netflix. Mrs. Higgins lowered her voice. If she had access to the email for 2 days, she could have downloaded statements. She could have ordered checks. She could have set up external transfers. Can I get a log? I asked. Of exactly what happened during those 48 hours? I can print the activity history, Mrs. Higgins said. She printed 5 pages. I took them without reading them right there. I didn't want to vomit in the bank lobby. I drove back to work, the papers sitting on the passenger seat like a loaded gun. That evening, I did the thing I had been dreading most. I sat down with my full credit reports from all 3 bureaus. I had skimmed them before, just enough to see the inquiries, but now I needed to do a forensic autopsy. I went line by line, closed accounts, paid accounts, student loans, and then, under the revolving credit section of the Equifax report, I found it. Capital One Venture Card. Authorized user. Status: open/current. Balance: $8,400. Credit limit: $15,000. I didn't have a Capital One card. I had never had a Capital One card. But being an authorized user meant I was attached to someone else's account. It meant their history was my history. It was a trick people use to boost credit scores for their children. But why was I on it? And whose card was it? I looked at the account opening date. 2 years and 3 months ago. Right around the time I lost my job. Right before I moved in with Morgan. If Morgan had added me as an authorized user, she could have done it without my signature. She just needed my social security number. And she had that. She had my tax returns from when I filed for unemployment. But why? To help me? If she wanted to help my credit score, that would be one thing. But an $8,000 balance wasn't helping. It was increasing my debt-to-income ratio. I kept scrolling. In the inquiries section, I found the soft pull again. Sunbelt Financial. Date: January 4th. Type: soft inquiry/pre-qualification. A soft inquiry meant they were checking my credit without a formal application, usually for marketing or pre-approval. I picked up my phone. It was 7 o'clock, but mortgage lenders often worked late. I searched for Sunbelt Financial. It was a mid-sized lender based in Ohio. I dialed the number. Sunbelt Financial, this is David. Hi, David, I said. I had my professional logistics coordinator voice on, calm, authoritative. My name is Piper Flores. I'm looking at my credit report, and I see a soft inquiry from your firm on January 4th. I didn't apply for a loan with you. Flores, David said. I heard typing. Let me pull that up. January 4th. Ah, here we are. Why did you run my credit? I asked. It looks like it was part of a file setup, David said easily. For the refinance application, we run a soft pull on all parties to check viability before the hard pull. I didn't apply for a refinance, I said. Is this not the co-borrower? David asked. He sounded confused. I have a Piper Flores listed here on the application for the property at... Wait, let me check the address. I am not a co-borrower, I said, spacing my words out. I do not own a home. I did not agree to this. There was a silence on the line. A long, heavy silence. Oh, David said. His tone changed completely. It became guarded. I see. Ma'am, for security purposes, I can't discuss the details of the application if you aren't the primary applicant. You just told me I'm listed as a co-borrower, I said. That makes me an applicant. Who is the primary applicant? I can't disclose that, David said. I'm going to have to transfer you to our compliance department. David, wait. Hold, please. The line clicked. Then the hold music started. I waited for 40 minutes. No one picked up. The line eventually disconnected. I sat there, staring at the phone. Co-borrower. Morgan wasn't just using my name for bills. She was trying to put me on a mortgage. She was trying to refinance her house. the house she claimed she owned, the house she lorded over me. And she needed my income, or my clean slate, or just a second body to make the numbers work. But my credit was trash. Why would she use me? Unless she didn't know how bad my credit was, or unless she had fixed it just enough to use it. I needed perspective. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of paper. I called Chloe. Chloe was my best friend from college. She was a paralegal, cynical and sharp-edged, the kind of person who drank black coffee and didn't believe in happy endings. We met at a diner halfway between my apartment and her office. I laid it all out: the Facebook post, the medical bill, the bank log, the mortgage inquiry. Chloe listened without interrupting. She ate a fry, dipped it in mayo, and chewed slowly. "You're missing the point," she said finally. "What point?" I asked. "The point is, she's stealing my identity." "No," Chloe said. "That's the crime. I'm talking about the cover-up, the Facebook post." "She posted it because she's mean," I said. "She wanted to hurt me." "Piper, wake up," Chloe snapped, though not unkindly. "Morgan isn't just mean, she's smart. Think about it. If she's trying to put you on a mortgage without your consent, that's fraud. That's a felony. If you find out and go to the police, or the family, what's her defense?" I shook my head. "I don't know. That it was a mistake?" "No," Chloe said. She leaned forward. "Her defense is that you agreed to it. Her defense is that you owed her. She's building a public narrative. Piper lived here for free for 2 years. Piper cost me thousands. Piper promised to help me refinance to pay me back for my kindness." I felt a chill go down my spine. "The Facebook post wasn't an emotional outburst," Chloe continued. "It was evidence. She's establishing a debt. She's telling the world, look how much this girl took from me. So when her name shows up on a loan document next to yours, she can say, Piper agreed to this as repayment. Now she's just backing out because she's unstable and ungrateful." "She's gaslighting the entire zip code," I whispered. "Exactly," Chloe said. "If you accuse her now, you look like the crazy sister who is lashing out because she got kicked out. It's brilliant. Actually, evil, but brilliant." "So what do I do?" I asked. "You don't fight her on Facebook," Chloe said. "You fight her with paper. You get every log, every receipt, every timestamp, and you don't tell her you know. You let her keep digging the hole until she falls in." I left the diner with a new kind of energy. It wasn't hope. It was focus. I needed one last thing. There was a box of winter boots I had left in the garage at Morgan's house. I didn't really need the boots, but I needed to see the house. I needed to see the scene of the crime with my new eyes. I texted Morgan. "Hey, realized I left my winter boots in the garage. Can I swing by and grab them from the porch?" "I won't come in." She replied instantly. "Fine, I'll put them out. Don't ring the bell." Bella is napping. Bella was 10 years old. She didn't nap. Morgan just didn't want to see me. I drove over. The house looked exactly the same. Perfect. Imposing. A monument to the upper-middle-class dream. I pulled into the driveway. The box was on the porch. I walked up the path, my heart thumping. I grabbed the box. I turned to leave. Then I paused. I looked at the mailbox at the end of the driveway. It was a large, brick-encased mailbox, but something was missing. The little red metal flag that you raised to signal outgoing mail was gone, snapped off. I walked down the driveway, casually, like I was checking my phone. As I passed the mailbox, I glanced inside. The lid wasn't latched. There was a stack of mail inside. It was thin, maybe 3 envelopes. It was Tuesday. Tuesday was usually a heavy mail day. Coupons, flyers, bills. I looked closer without touching it. The envelopes were all addressed to occupant or junk mail. There were no bills, no bank statements, no mortgage notices. Morgan wasn't just managing the mail. She was intercepting it, or she was diverting it. If she was doing shady financial maneuvers, refinancing, taking out loans, moving money, she couldn't risk a paper statement showing up. She couldn't risk her husband, Dan, seeing a letter from a lender he didn't know about. She was scrubbing the physical evidence just like she had scrubbed the Google sheet. I got back in my car and drove away. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard they hurt. On the drive home, I stopped at an office supply store. I bought a 3-inch binder. I bought a set of dividers. I bought a hole punch. I went back to my apartment and cleared off the card table. I labeled the first divider, the narrative. I printed the screenshots of the Facebook post and the comments. I labeled the second divider, the identity. I punched holes in the credit reports, the bank logs, the medical bill with the forged signature. I labeled the third divider, the house. I put the notes from my call with Sunbelt Financial there. I was building a case. If this ever went to a lawyer, or a judge, or even just my parents, I wouldn't use tears. I wouldn't use, she said. I would use dates. I would use timestamps. I would use the cold, hard reality of compliance logs. I was just closing the binder when my phone buzzed. It was a group text. Morgan created a group. Family meeting. The members were Mom, Dad, Aunt Linda, Uncle Mike, Morgan, and me. Morgan sent the first message. Hi, everyone. Things have been really tense lately and there's a lot of misunderstanding floating around. I want us to get together this Sunday at O'Malley's to clear the air. We need to talk about what happened with Piper moving out and the financial situation. I just want transparency. Transparency, my mother replied immediately. That's a wonderful idea. Honey, let's heal this. Aunt Linda. We'll be there. Love you both. I stared at the screen. She wasn't looking for transparency. She was looking for a jury. She was convening a trial before the charges had even been filed. She knew I had moved out. She knew I was quiet. She probably sensed, with a predator's instinct, that I was starting to ask questions, so she was going to cut me off. She was going to get everyone in a room and present her breakdown of how much I cost her, how much I owed her, and how ungrateful I was. She was going to lock in the narrative before I could open my binder. I felt a surge of adrenaline. I didn't reply. I just took a screenshot of the text and printed it out. I punched 3 holes in the paper and snapped it into the binder. Let them have their meeting. Let them set the stage. I wasn't coming to play the role of the unstable little sister anymore. I was coming as the prosecution. O'Malley's was the kind of restaurant that specialized in neutrality. It had beige walls, a menu that offended no one, and acoustics designed to absorb the sound of polite family disagreements. It was the Switzerland of our suburb, which was exactly why Morgan had chosen it. I arrived 20 minutes early. I selected a booth in the back corner, one that gave me a clear view of the entrance and put a wall solid against my spine. I ordered an iced tea and opened my notebook. It was a new notebook, black and hardbound, distinct from the 3-inch binder I had left in my car. I clicked my pen open and closed, testing the spring. Date, Sunday, January 25th. Location, O'Malley's. Attendees, Morgan, Dan, Mom, Dad, Aunt Linda, Uncle Mike. Subject, the air clearing. I watched them come in. They arrived as a phalanx, moving in a tight formation that suggested they had met in the parking lot to coordinate their emotional strategy. Morgan was in the center, wearing a soft pastel sweater that made her look vulnerable and maternal. She was holding a folder. My mother was gripping Morgan's elbow, a gesture of physical support that told me everything I needed to know about the verdict they had already reached. They spotted me. For a second, the group hesitated. I wasn't cowering. I wasn't looking at my phone. I was watching them with the flat, unblinking gaze of a court stenographer. Piper, my mother said, sliding into the booth first. Her voice was breathless, pitched high with forced cheerfulness. You're early. I like to be prepared, I said. The rest of them piled in. Morgan sat directly across from me. Her husband, Dan, sat next to her, looking at the menu with an intensity that suggested he would rather be anywhere else on earth. Aunt Linda and Uncle Mike took the chairs at the end of the table. Flanking us like bailiffs, the waitress came. Orders were placed. Small talk was attempted and died, a quick, suffocating death. Then Morgan cleared her throat. She placed the folder on the table. I didn't want to do this, she began, her voice trembling just enough to register as authentic to everyone but me. I really didn't, but I feel like there is so much anger coming from you, Piper, and I just want you to understand the reality of the last 2 years. I picked up my pen. I didn't speak. I looked at the folder. Morgan opened it and pulled out a sheet of yellow legal paper. It was covered in handwriting, her handwriting. The same blocky, rushed script I had seen on the forged change of address form. We sat down and did the math, Morgan said, because I don't think you realize the burden we took on to help you. She slid the paper across the table. It was a list, a crude, rounded number list. Rent, market value, $1,200 per month. Times 24 months equals $28,800. Utilities share, $300 per month times 24 months equals $7,200. Food/groceries, $400 per month times 24 months equals $9,600. Car insurance/gas help, $2,000. Total support, provided, $47,600. The table was silent. My father let out a low whistle. Nearly 50 grand, Uncle Mike muttered, shaking his head. That is a lot of love, Morgan. That is a lot of love. We never asked for a dime, Morgan said, wiping a non-existent tear from her cheek. We absorbed it because you are my sister, but then you leave, and you act like a victim? It just hurts. Piper, it really hurts. My mother reached across the table and squeezed Morgan's hand. We know, honey. We know how much you sacrificed. I looked at the paper. I looked at the line for food. $400 a month. I remembered the organic produce, the imported cheeses, the wine. I remembered the weeks where I bought the groceries with my own debit card because Morgan had forgotten to transfer the household funds. I remembered the nights I cooked beans and rice for myself so they could have the steaks. I looked at the utilities, $300. I remembered turning off the heat during the day to save money. I remembered the cash I stuffed in the drawer. I looked at the rent, $1,200, for a guest room in a house they were already paying for, a house where I provided 30 hours a week of unpaid childcare. I didn't scream. The scream was there, burning in my throat like acid. But I swallowed it. I wrote in my notebook. Morgan presents handwritten ledger. Claims $47,000 in debt. No receipts provided. Piper, my father said, his voice stern. Do you have anything to say? Your sister is pouring her heart out here. I looked up. I kept my face completely slack. I would like to see the itemized receipts, I said. The table recoiled, as if I had thrown a glass of water in Morgan's face. Excuse me? Morgan said, blinking rapidly. For the food, I said, my voice level. And the utilities. I would like to see the bills and the grocery receipts. I kept a spreadsheet of my own contributions, but it was deleted from the shared drive on Tuesday morning. So if we are talking about numbers, I would like to see the source documents. Source documents? Aunt Linda scoffed. Piper, this isn't a tax audit. It's your family. She housed you for 2 years. I am just asking for clarity, I said. This piece of paper lists $9,600 in food. I bought the groceries every Tuesday and Friday. I know what we spent. I know who paid for what. I'm asking for the bank statements that match these numbers. Morgan's face hardened. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by the sharp, calculating look I knew well. You are unbelievable, she hissed. I am trying to show you how much we loved you, and you are acting like a lawyer. This is exactly why we couldn't live with you anymore. You are so cold. You calculate everything. I'm not the one who wrote a bill for $47,000 on legal paper, I said. It's not a bill, Morgan cried out, her voice rising so that heads turned at nearby tables. It's context. I'm not asking you to pay it. I'm asking you to stop acting like I'm the bad guy. Okay, I said. I wrote in my notebook. Morgan confirms this is not a demand for payment. Verbal confirmation witnessed by 5 people. Stop writing, my mother snapped. Put the damn notebook away. Piper, you are embarrassing us. I'm taking notes, I said. I find my memory isn't what it used to be. I want to make sure I don't forget what was said today. Dan, Morgan's husband, spoke for the first time. He looked tired. He looked like a man who was watching a train wreck he was aboard but couldn't stop. Piper, can you just say thank you? He asked quietly. Can we just end this? She just wants an apology for the way you left. I looked at Dan. I wondered if he knew about the HELOC. I wondered if he knew about the credit inquiries. Thank you for the housing, Dan, I said. I really appreciate the use of the guest room. I stood up. I placed a $20 bill on the table for my iced tea. I have to go, I said. I have a lot of paperwork to catch up on. If you walk out now, my father warned, his face red. Don't expect us to come running after you. I don't expect that, I said. I really don't. I walked out. I felt their eyes on my back. I felt the heat of their judgment, but mostly, I felt the terrifying clarity of being an outsider in my own bloodline. I got into my car and locked the doors. My hands were shaking now. The adrenaline dump was hitting me. My phone buzzed. It was a direct message from Morgan. She must have typed it under the table while I was walking out. If you make me look bad, I'll tell them why you really lost your job. I stared at the screen. I had lost my job because of a corporate restructure. My entire department had been eliminated. It was boring. It was common. There was no scandal. There was no real reason. But Morgan was inventing one. She was implying that she held a secret. A shameful truth that would destroy me if released. It was a bluff, but it was a revealing bluff. It told me that her strategy was entirely based on shame. She believed that if she threatened my reputation, I would fold. She believed I was terrified of being seen as flawed. She was wrong. I wasn't terrified of being flawed. I was terrified of being liable. I drove home, the text message burning a hole in my digital pocket. I didn't reply. I screenshotted it. I added it to the digital folder. When I got back to my apartment, I didn't collapse. I didn't cry. The meeting had sharpened me. I went back to the medical bill, the one with the forged signature. I called the hospital billing department again. It was Sunday, but the automated system allowed me to access call logs if I navigated the labyrinth correctly. I didn't get a human, but I got a correspondence history from the online portal. I looked at the entry from 3 months ago. Update. Patient contact info. Updated by authorized advocate via phone. Advocate. Name, Sarah G. J. Source, email, as Jenkins Elite Wealth Coaching, net, Elite Wealth Coaching. I Googled it. The website was a template. Stock photos of people shaking hands in front of glass buildings. A lot of words like abundance, leverage, and breaking the scarcity mindset. There was no About Us page with bios. There was no physical address. Just a P.O. box in a town 20 miles away. I went to the domain registration lookup tool. I typed in elitewealthcoaching.net. The registrant information was privacy protected, but the administrative contact email was visible. Jessica M. Vance82gmail.com. Jessica Vance. I knew that name. Jessica was Morgan's best friend from high school, the one who was always starting a new business. She sold essential oils one year, leggings the next. I remembered a conversation from 6 months ago. Morgan had been glowing in the kitchen, drinking wine. I finally hired a financial coach. She had told me, "She's amazing. She's teaching me how to optimize our debt. It's all about cash flow management. You wouldn't understand. Piper, you're too risk-averse, but we're going to be debt-free in 5 years by leveraging our assets." Leveraging our assets. Suddenly, the tumblers in the lock clicked into place. The weird cash flow moments. The times I put money in the drawer because the power bill was lost. The overdrafts. Morgan wasn't just bad with money. She was being coached on how to juggle it. Jessica Vance wasn't a financial advisor. She was a predator selling a shell game, and the game required assets to leverage. The house was an asset, and apparently, so was I. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. If Jessica was the advocate who called the hospital, she was impersonating me, or Morgan was impersonating me and using Jessica's email domain to look official. I needed to see how deep the rot went. I logged into the IRS website. I had set up an ID, me account years ago. I navigated to the Get Transcript tool. I downloaded my wage and income transcript for the previous tax year. I scanned the list, W-2 from the logistics company, interest from my pathetic savings account, and then, at the bottom, Form 1099 NEC, Non-Employee Compensation, Payer, Elite Wealth Coaching, LLC, Amount, $4,500. I stopped breathing. I had never worked for Elite Wealth Coaching. I had never received a dime from them. But according to the IRS, I had earned $4,500 as a contractor for them. If they paid me, where did the money go? I looked at the details. There was no bank account listed on the transcript, just the income report. But I knew how these gigs paid. They paid through apps, PayPal, Venmo, Zelle. I grabbed my phone. I opened Venmo. I searched for my own name. There was my account, Piper Flores. But there was another one, Piper Flores Consulting. The profile picture was a generic flower. I clicked on it. It was private, but I could see the friends list. There was only one friend, Morgan Flores. My sister had set up a fake consulting profile in my name. She had hired me through her friend's coaching company. The company paid Piper, creating a tax deduction for the business, and the money went into this fake account, which Morgan controlled. She was laundering money through my identity. It wasn't just borrowing. It wasn't just being a freeloader. This was tax fraud. This was identity theft. This was federal. I sat back in my chair, the room spinning slightly. I thought about the family meeting, the yellow legal paper, the $47,000 of support. It was all projection. She needed to establish that I cost her money so that she could justify the money she was stealing from me. In her twisted logic, she wasn't stealing. She was reclaiming what I owed her. She was balancing the books of her own resentment using my social security number. I filed an identity theft affidavit on the IRS website immediately. My hands were shaking so hard, I had to retype my own name 3 times. I froze everything again. I placed fraud alerts. I printed the transcript. Then I sat on the floor, surrounded by the paper debris of my sister's betrayal. And I felt a grief so heavy it felt like gravity had doubled. I had a therapy intake appointment the next morning. It was over video call. The therapist, a woman named Doctor, heiress with kind eyes and a cluttered bookshelf behind her, listened to me for 40 minutes. She listened to the facts, the logs, the fraud. "I just don't understand," I said, my voice breaking. "I was her sister. I scrubbed her floors. I loved her kid. Why would she do this to me?" "Doctor," Aris leaned forward. "Piper," she said softly, "you are mourning the sister you thought you had. You are mourning the idea of a safety net. But the person who did this, she didn't see you as a sister. She saw you as a resource." "But the Facebook post," I said, "the humiliation. Why do that if she's stealing from me? Why draw attention?" "To keep you small." "Doctor," Aris said, "the humiliation is a ritual. If she keeps you in the role of the mess, the freeloader, the unstable one, then no one will believe you when you speak the truth. It creates a barrier of disbelief. It makes you the unreliable narrator of your own life." I stared at the screen. "She needs you to be the loser." "Doctor," Aris said, "so that she can remain the winner, and she needs you to be the debtor, so she doesn't have to face the fact that she is the thief." The session ended. I closed the laptop. I walked to the mailbox downstairs. I needed fresh air. I needed to feel the cold wind on my face. There was a slip in my box. Certified mail. Pick up at front desk. I went to the leasing office. The manager handed me a stiff cardboard envelope. I signed for it. My hand was steady now. I walked back up to my apartment and sat at the table. I used a knife to slit the envelope open. Inside was a document with a red border. Notice of intent to foreclose. The property listed was Morgan's address, the beautiful colonial with the manicured hedges. I scanned the page. Borrower, Morgan Flores. Co-borrower, blank. Interested parties, Daniel Flores. Piper Flores. There it was. Piper Flores. I wasn't the borrower. I wasn't the co-borrower, but I was listed as an interested party. In legalese, an interested party is someone who has a claim or a lien on the property, or someone whose rights might be affected by the foreclosure. Why would the bank think I had a claim on the house? Unless Morgan had filed a quitclaim deed, or unless she had used my name on a title modification, or unless she had forged a document stating that I had an equity interest in order to secure a loan against that interest. She hadn't just used my credit for a credit card. She had woven me into the title of the house itself. She had used me as collateral, and now the house was going under, if the house was foreclosed on. And I was listed as an interested party. My name would be attached to the foreclosure proceedings. It would be public record. It would be a legal anchor dragging me down to the bottom of the ocean alongside her. I looked at the date on the notice. It was dated 4 days ago. That was why she called the family meeting. That was why she was frantic. That was why she needed to clear the air. She wasn't trying to get an apology. She was trying to get me back in the fold. She needed me to sign something. She needed me to help her save the house, or to take the fall for losing it. The stakes weren't social anymore. They weren't about who washed the dishes or who paid for the groceries. My sister had handed me a rope, and I had thought it was a lifeline. I realized now, staring at the red letters of the foreclosure notice, that it was a noose. I picked up the phone. I didn't call my mother. I didn't call Morgan. I Googled consumer protection attorney near me. I was done being a sister. I was done being a daughter. I was a victim of financial crimes, and I was going to act like one. The legal clinic was located in the basement of a community center, a room that smelled of stale coffee and industrial carpet cleaner. It was a place for people who had run out of options, people who were fighting evictions, wage theft, and predatory lenders. I fit right in. I sat on a metal folding chair, clutching my 3-inch binder like a shield. Across from me sat Elias Thorne. He was young, maybe 30, with sleeves rolled up to his elbows and circles under his eyes that spoke of too many cases and not enough sleep. "Okay, Ms. Flores," he said, opening a fresh notepad. "You said on the intake form that this is an identity theft case involving a family member?" "Yes," I said. "My sister." I saw the flicker of fatigue in his eyes. Family cases were messy. They were usually he said, she said dramas that ended in tears, not settlements. He leaned back, clearly expecting a story about a stolen credit card or a disputed car loan. "I have documentation," I said, sliding the binder across the scarred wooden desk. Elias opened it. He flipped past the Facebook screenshots without pausing. He glanced at the credit report with the unauthorized inquiry. He raised an eyebrow at the forged medical bill signature, but when he turned the page to the notice of intent to foreclose, his hand stopped. He leaned forward. The fatigue vanished, replaced by the sharp, predatory focus of a lawyer who sees blood in the water. "Where did you get this?" he asked, tapping the red-bordered document. "It came via certified mail yesterday," I said. "I'm listed as an interested party, but I don't own the house. I just lived there for 2 years." Elias looked at me, then back at the document. "You're not on the mortgage?" "No." "You're not on the deed?" "No. It's her house, hers and her husband's." "Then you shouldn't be receiving this notice," he said. "Banks don't spend money on certified mail for house guests. If you are listed as an interested party, it means the lender believes you have a legal or equitable interest in the property, or," he paused, "or someone told them you do." He started flipping through the rest of the binder more slowly now. He looked at the Elite Wealth Coaching 1099 form. He looked at the bank logs, showing the email change. "This is sophisticated," he murmured. "This isn't just someone stealing $20 from a purse. This is structural fraud." He looked up at me. "Ms. Flores, I need you to think very carefully. In the 2 years you lived there, did you ever sign anything? Anything at all?" "No," I said quickly. I mean, I signed for packages. I signed birthday cards. Think harder, Elias said. Did she ever put a stack of papers in front of you? Maybe told you it was for the HOA, or a utility transfer, or insurance updates? The memory didn't come as a flash. It came as a slow, creeping nausea. It was a Saturday morning. About 8 months ago, the kitchen was bright with sunlight. Morgan was in a frantic cleaning mode, organizing piles of mail on the island. She had a stack of papers clipped together. "Piper, can you do me a huge favor?" she had asked, not looking up. "The refinance people are being such a pain. They need all adults in the household to sign this disclosure thing just acknowledging that you live here. It's some new Patriot Act nonsense because of your address history. Just sign here and here so I can FedEx this out before noon." I was drinking coffee. I was half awake. I trusted her. "She gave me a refi packet," I whispered. "She said it was just disclosures, just acknowledging I was a resident." Elias closed his eyes for a second. "And you signed it?" "I think so," I said. "I didn't read it. It was thick. I just signed the little flags." "Okay," Elias said. "Here is what likely happened. That wasn't a disclosure. It was likely a quitclaim deed or an addendum to the deed of trust. She might have used your signature to add you to the title, or to a loan modification agreement. If she added you to the title, even with a tiny percentage of ownership, she could use your income, or your clean record, relatively speaking, to qualify for a modification she wouldn't have gotten otherwise. But my credit is bad," I said. "Why would she want me?" "Because maybe her credit is worse," Elias said. "Or maybe she needed a second body to justify a hardship program. Some modification programs require all household contributors to be on the loan. If she forged your income, which this fake 1099 suggests she did, then she presented you as a co-borrower with income, living in the home, contributing to the household." He tapped the foreclosure notice. "And now that the loan is defaulting, the bank is coming for everyone on the list, including you." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Can they take my money?" "I don't have any money." "They can ruin your future," Elias said. "A foreclosure on your record means no mortgage for 7 years. It can affect your ability to rent an apartment, get a job, even get car insurance. You are tethered to a sinking ship." "What do I do?" I asked. "We go on the offensive," Elias said. "First, we need to see exactly what she filed. We need to pull the county recorder logs." We spent the next hour drafting requests. Elias showed me how to search the county recorder's online database. It was a clunky, outdated system, but it was public. We searched by the property address. A list of documents populated: deed of trust, 2018, modification agreement, 2023, notice of default, 2025. And then, near the top, a document recorded 6 months ago, affidavit of interest/grant deed. Grantor, Morgan Flores. Grantee, Morgan Flores and Piper Flores. My name was misspelled, Piper with a Y. "There it is," Elias said, pointing at the screen. "She granted you an interest. She put you on the deed." I stared at the name, Piper. "Why is it spelled wrong?" I asked. "Probably a typo in her rush," Elias said. "Or maybe a way to claim plausible deniability later. Oh, that wasn't my sister Piper. That was some other Piper. It doesn't matter. It's close enough to be dangerous." He clicked on the document to view the image. It was a blurry scan. It listed me as a limited interest holder. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means you own a sliver," Elias explained, "just enough to make you a party to the transaction. She used this to anchor the loan modification. See here?" He pointed to a reference number. "This deed references the loan modification number. She added you to the title to secure the modification. She basically sold a piece of her house to you for $0, without your knowledge. So she could tell the bank, 'Look, I have a co-owner who can help pay.' And then she pocketed the money she saved on the payments," I said. "And now she's defaulting anyway," Elias said. "And because you are an owner of record, you are a defendant in the foreclosure." I felt a surge of rage so pure it almost felt good. It burned away the sadness. It burned away the guilt. "I want to sue her," I said. "We will," Elias said. "But first, we dispute. We need to create a paper trail that screams fraud so loud the bank drops you before they file the lawsuit." He helped me draft a series of letters. To the lender, "I am a victim of identity theft. I did not sign this deed. I did not agree to this modification. The signature is a forgery or obtained under false pretenses. Here is my police report. Here is my affidavit of identity theft." To the county recorder, "Notice of lis pendens, dispute of title. To Elite Wealth Coaching, preservation of evidence letter. Do not delete any emails, call logs, or recordings related to Morgan Flores or Piper Flores. Litigation is imminent." "This preservation letter is key," Elias said as he printed it. "If this financial coach is legit, she will panic and cooperate. If she's a fraud, she might destroy evidence. But if she destroys evidence after receiving this, it's a felony. It puts pressure on the weak link." I left the clinic with a stack of letters and a new assignment. I had to mail these via certified mail. Return receipt requested. I had to become the most bureaucratic nightmare my sister had ever encountered, but while I was building my fortress of paper, Morgan was escalating the war of perception. 2 days later, I was scrolling through social media, a bad habit I couldn't break, when I saw it. Morgan hadn't posted about me directly. She had learned from my silence. Instead, she was posting vague, inspirational quotes with black backgrounds. The saddest thing about betrayal is that it never comes from your enemies. I opened my home and my heart, and I was left with empty rooms and broken promises. God gives his hardest battles to his strongest soldiers, praying for peace in my family despite the users who try to destroy it. The comments were a chorus of sympathy. "Stay strong. Morgan, you are a saint for putting up with it for so long." Some people just take and take. I noticed that 2 of my cousins had unfollowed me. My aunt had hidden her stories from me. The silence was spreading. They were circling the wagons around Morgan, the wounded matriarch, protecting her from the unstable sister who had vanished into the night. It hurt. It hurt more than I expected. I wanted to scream the truth. I wanted to post the foreclosure notice. I wanted to post the fake 1099. But Elias had warned me, "Do not engage. Do not post. Anything you say can be twisted. Let the documents speak." I went to the grocery store that evening, wearing a hoodie and sunglasses, feeling like a celebrity in reverse, hiding not from adoration, but from judgment. I was in the pasta aisle when I heard a voice. "Piper?" I tensed. I turned around. It was Mrs. Gable. She lived 3 houses down from Morgan. She was a nice woman, a retired teacher who walked a golden retriever every morning. "Hi, Mrs. Gable," I said, adjusting my basket. She looked at me with a strange expression. It wasn't pity, it was curiosity. "I haven't seen you walking Bella lately," she said. "I moved out," I said. "A few weeks ago." "Oh," she said. She lowered her voice, glancing around the aisle. "I saw Morgan's post about the situation." "Yeah," I said. "It's unfortunate." Mrs. Gable stepped closer. "I didn't comment," she said. "I stay out of Facebook drama. But I have to say, I was always confused." "Confused?" "Well," she said, "Morgan told us, at the block party last summer, that the reason you lived there was because you were co-owners. She said you guys bought the house together as an investment, but she was the one doing all the work while you just checked in. She made it sound like you were this absentee landlord who was crashing on the couch." My jaw dropped. "She said we bought the house together?" "Yes," Mrs. Gable nodded. "She said, my sister's on the deed, so technically she has a right to be here, even if she doesn't pay for the roof repairs. We all felt so bad for her, having a partner who didn't pull their weight." I started to laugh. It was a dry, mirthless sound. "She told you I was the owner so she wouldn't have to admit I was broke," I said, And then she told the bank I was the owner so she could get a loan. She used the lie in both directions. Mrs. Gable looked shocked. So, you weren't an owner? No, I said. I was a maid who is now being foreclosed on. I left Mrs. Gable standing by the spaghetti sauce. The lie had been circulating for years. She had planted the seeds long before the foreclosure. To the neighbors. I wasn't a charity case. I was a deadbeat business partner. That was why the freeloader post hit so hard. It confirmed what she had been whispering over Chardonnay for months. I got back to my apartment and added Mrs. Gable's statement to my notes. Witness: Mrs. Gable. Testimony: Morgan claimed co-ownership verbally in 2024. I sat down to review the new documents Elias had helped me pull. I was looking at the original deed of trust for Morgan's house, and then the second lien. There was a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. It was taken out 2 months after I moved in. The amount was $60,000. I looked at the date, October 2024. I opened my calendar archive. What happened in October 2024? That was the month Morgan got the new patio installed, stone pavers, a fire pit. She had told me. Dan got a big bonus. So we're treating ourselves, and the next month, November, she went on that girls' trip to Napa with Jessica Vance. She came back with 3 cases of wine, and in January, she leased the new SUV. The old car was a death trap. Piper, we needed this for safety. She hadn't paid for any of it with a bonus. She had paid for it with the house, and when the payments on the HELOC started coming due and the interest rates spiked, she couldn't keep up. That was when she panicked. That was when she needed the loan modification. That was when she needed Piper Flores to be a co-owner. She had eaten the equity of her home, bite by bite, and when the plate was empty, she had served me up as the final course. My phone rang. It was Elias. I have news, he said. The lender received our preservation letter. Their legal department just called me. They are concerned. Concerned is good, I said. They confirmed that there is a loan modification on file signed by a Piper Flores. Elias said, they are launching an internal fraud investigation. They are freezing the foreclosure proceedings for 30 days while they investigate. That's great, I said. It is, Elias said. But listen to me, Piper, when the bank freezes the foreclosure, they send a notice to the primary borrower. Morgan is going to get a letter tomorrow stating that the foreclosure is on hold due to a fraud allegation by Piper Flores. My stomach tightened. She's going to know I'm fighting. She is going to know you are nuking her world, Elias corrected. And she is going to panic. A cornered animal bites. She might try to contact you. She might try to guilt you. She might try to threaten you. She already threatened to expose why I lost my job, I said. She will try harder, Elias warned. She might try to get you to sign a correction document. She might say, oh, it was a mistake. Just sign this waiver so we can fix it. Do not sign. Do not meet. Do not answer. I won't, I promised. Block her number if you have to, Elias said. Let everything go through me. I hung up. I looked at the family meeting text thread. I hadn't left the group yet. I wanted to see the chatter. It had been quiet since Sunday. Then, a notification popped up. Aunt Linda added you to an event. Family Fresh Start. BBQ. The message followed. Hi everyone. We are so sad about the tension. We want to host a BBQ this Saturday at our place. Neutral ground. Let's just eat burgers and remember we are family. Morgan and Dan will be there. Piper, we really hope you can come. It's time for a fresh start. A fresh start. It was a trap. Morgan knew the letter from the bank was coming. Or maybe she just sensed the walls closing in. She needed me in a room again. She needed witnesses. She needed to pressure me into fixing the mess before the bank auditors started looking at the signatures. If I went, they would ambush me. They would have a document waiting. Just sign this. Piper. It tells the bank you're okay with the modification so we don't lose the house. Do you want your niece to be homeless? They would weaponize Bella. They would weaponize my parents. I looked at the invitation. If I didn't go, I was the coward. I was the one refusing to reconcile. If I went, I was walking into a lion's den. But I wasn't the same Piper who had walked out of that house 3 weeks ago. I had a binder. I had a lawyer. I had the truth. I remembered Elias's advice. No meetings without counsel. But this wasn't a legal meeting. This was a family BBQ. If I brought a lawyer to a BBQ, I looked insane. But if I went alone, I realized I couldn't go to reconcile. I couldn't go to argue. If I went, I had to go to end it. I typed a reply to the group. I'll be there. I put the phone down. I wasn't going to bring Elias, but I was going to bring the binder, and I was going to bring copies. Morgan wanted a public forum? Fine, I would give her one, but she wasn't going to like the presentation. I spent the rest of the night organizing. I made 5 copies of the foreclosure notice, 5 copies of the Piper Flores deed, 5 copies of the fake 1099. I put them in neat manila envelopes. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to cry. I was simply going to hand out the reading material. I blocked Morgan on Instagram. I blocked her on Facebook. I blocked her on TikTok. It wasn't a retreat. It was a boundary. I was cutting off her supply of my attention. I was removing myself as her audience so that when Saturday came, I could be her judge. I went to sleep, and for the first time in 2 years, I didn't dream about falling. I dreamed about a house of cards, standing in a wind tunnel, and I dreamed that I was the wind. The envelope in my passenger seat was not thick. It did not look like a weapon. It was a standard 9x12 manila envelope, the kind used to mail photographs or tax returns. Inside, I had placed 5 stapled packets. Each packet contained a copy of the foreclosure notice, a copy of the deed granting ownership to Piper Flores, and a copy of the IRS transcript showing income I had never earned. I parked my car 3 houses down from Aunt Linda's driveway. I did not want to be blocked in. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked boring. I was wearing jeans and a gray sweater. I wore no makeup to hide the circles under my eyes. I wanted to look exactly like what I was, a woman who was tired of being a character in someone else's fiction. I took a breath that rattled in my chest. I wasn't going to this barbecue to fight. Fighting implies that there is a winner and a loser, and that the relationship might survive the battle. I was going to this barbecue to perform an autopsy. I picked up the envelope. I stepped out of the car. The air smelled of charcoal and lighter fluid, the universal scent of suburban truce. Aunt Linda's backyard was a shrine to enforced happiness. There were string lights buzzing overhead, a cooler full of beer, and a playlist of soft rock hits from the 90s playing at a volume that discouraged intimate conversation. My family was scattered across the lawn like chess pieces. My mother was near the potato salad, clutching a glass of white wine. My father was by the grill with Uncle Mike, and there was Morgan. She was sitting on a wicker love seat, holding court. She looked spectacular. She was wearing a flowing white sundress that made her look innocent, almost angelic. Her hair was blown out to perfection. She was laughing at something Cousin Sarah said, her head thrown back, her throat exposed. When I walked through the gate, the laughter stopped. It didn't taper off. It was severed. "Piper!" Aunt Linda cried out, rushing toward me with the frantic energy of a diplomat trying to prevent a war. "You made it! Oh, honey, I am so glad. Come in, get a drink." She hugged me. Her body was stiff. She smelled of floral perfume and anxiety. "Hi, Aunt Linda," I said. I kept my voice low. "Thanks for having me." I walked onto the patio. The silence was heavy, humid. My mother looked up, her eyes darting from me to Morgan. She offered a tight, hopeful smile, the kind you give to a bomb disposal technician. "Hi, everyone," I said. Morgan stood up. She set her drink down. She walked toward me with her arms open, her face arranging itself into an expression of profound, suffering love. "Piper," she breathed. "I'm so glad you came." She hugged me. I didn't hug back. I stood there, my arms at my sides. Holding the manila envelope against my hip, I felt the tension in her frame. She wasn't hugging me. She was checking for a wire. She was checking for resistance. "Can we talk?" she whispered in my ear, her voice trembling for the audience. "Just for a second? In the kitchen? I just want to hug you without everyone staring." "Sure," I said. We walked into the kitchen. It was cool and dim inside. The sliding glass door shut behind us, muffling the sounds of the party. Morgan turned to me. The tears that had been shimmering in her eyes on the patio vanished. Her face became businesslike. She reached into her oversized tote bag sitting on the counter. "Look," she said, her voice dropping to a rapid, hushed pitch. "I know things have been crazy. I know we said some things, but this has gotten out of hand. The bank is sending letters. It's a mess." "It is a mess," I agreed. "I fixed it," she said. She pulled a document out of her bag. It was clipped to a blue backing. "I talked to the lender. They said it was just a clerical error with the modification application. They said if we just clarify the ownership structure, they can process the refinance and get everything back on track. I just need you to sign this statement confirming you aren't on the loan so they can remove the flag from the account." She held it out to me. "It's just a formality, to clear your name." I looked at the document. It was titled, "Affidavit of Fact and Release of Interest." I didn't take it. I leaned in and read the text in the preamble. The undersigned, Piper Flores, hereby acknowledges that previous verbal agreements regarding equity interest in the property were non-binding, and accepts full responsibility for any credit inquiries initiated on her behalf as authorized acts of familial support. It wasn't a release. It was an admission. If I signed this, I was admitting that I had authorized the inquiries. I was admitting that there had been verbal agreements. I was validating her story that I was a partner in the property, just one who was now backing out. It would absolve her of the fraud and leave me holding the bag for the authorized acts. "I'm not signing this," I said. Morgan's smile faltered. "Piper, don't be difficult. It clears your name. It tells the bank you aren't liable." "It says I authorized the credit checks," I said. "I didn't." "You gave me the code," she hissed. "For the Netflix account. You gave me access." "I gave you access to stream movies," I said. "Not to refinance a house." Morgan's face hardened. It happened in the span of a heartbeat. The soft, wounded sister evaporated, and the predator appeared. Her eyes went flat and black. Her mouth became a thin, cruel line. "You lived in my house for 2 years," she said, her voice low and venomous. "You ate my food. You used my heat. You owe me this. If you don't sign this, the house goes into foreclosure. Do you understand? We lose the house. Bella loses her home. Is that what you want? Are you that selfish? I'm not the one who took out a home equity line of credit to pay for a patio," I said. Morgan flinched. "How did you—" She stopped herself. "You've been snooping." "I've been reading public records," I said. "Sign the paper," she commanded. It wasn't a request anymore. "Sign it, or I swear to God. Piper, I will destroy you. I will tell everyone about the breakdown. I will tell them you stole from me. I will make sure you never show your face in this town again." "No," I said. I turned and walked back toward the sliding glass door. "Don't you walk away from me!" she screamed. She followed me out onto the patio. The screen door slammed behind us. The music seemed to stop. Every head in the yard turned. Morgan didn't lower her voice. She decided to play her trump card. She decided to use the audience. "I am trying to help you," she shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. "I am trying to fix the mess you made. You refuse to take responsibility for anything. You lived off us for 2 years, and now you won't even sign a simple paper to help us keep the house?" She reached into her bag again and pulled out the yellow legal pad, the cost breakdown from the restaurant. "Look at this," she yelled, waving the list at our parents. $47,000. That is what she cost us. And she stands there and acts like the victim because I asked for a signature? "I am drowning here. Mom, we are drowning because of her." The yard was silent. My mother looked pale. Uncle Mike looked down at his shoes. It was a powerful performance. It framed the issue as morality, not math. It made me look petty and ungrateful. I stood by the cooler. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. "I didn't cost you $47,000, I said. My voice was not loud, but in the silence of the yard, it carried. "It's right here," Morgan screamed, slapping the paper. "Rent, food, utilities. You never paid a dime." "I paid," I said. "I paid in cash. I paid in labor. But that isn't why we are here." I looked at my father. "Dad, Morgan says I owe her money for rent. Fine, let's assume I do. Let's assume I am a terrible sister." I paused. "Then why did a mortgage lender run my credit as a co-borrower?" The question hung in the air. It was specific. It was concrete. It didn't fit the emotional narrative Morgan was spinning. "What?" my father asked, frowning. "Why is there a hard inquiry on my credit report from Sunbelt Financial for a joint mortgage application?" I asked, looking directly at Morgan. "It was a mistake," Morgan cried out, but her voice cracked. "I told you, it was a clerical error. The broker got confused because you lived there." "Brokers don't get confused and accidentally forge a signature on a deed," I said. "Forge?" Aunt Linda gasped. I opened the manila envelope. I took out the first packet. "This is a copy of a grant deed recorded with the county 6 months ago," I said, holding it up. "It transfers an interest in the property to Morgan Flores and Piper Flores, spelled with a Y." I walked over to Uncle Mike. He was the most neutral person there. I held the paper out to him. "Does that look like my signature, Mike?" I asked. Uncle Mike took the paper. He put on his reading glasses. He looked at the signature. He looked at me. "No," he said softly. "That looks like block letters." "And this," I said, pulling out the next document, "is a notice of intent to foreclose received this week. It lists me as an interested party, not a tenant. An interested party. That means the bank thinks I own part of the house." Morgan rushed forward. "Stop it. She's lying. She printed those off the internet. She's trying to confuse you." "And this," I continued, my voice steady, cutting through her panic, "is an IRS transcript. It shows that last year, I supposedly earned $4,500 from a company called Elite Wealth Coaching." I looked at Morgan. I never worked for Elite Wealth Coaching, but Morgan's friend Jessica does. My mother made a sound, a small, strangled whimper. "This isn't about rent, Mom," I said. "This is about a second mortgage. This is about a $60,000 home equity line of credit that was spent on a patio and a new car, and when the payments got too high. Morgan used my identity to try to modify the loan." "Liar!" Morgan screamed. She lunged for the papers in Uncle Mike's hand. "Give me that. It's private. It's family business." "It's public record," I said. Uncle Mike pulled the papers back, out of her reach. He was reading the foreclosure notice. His face was gray. "Morgan," Uncle Mike said, his voice heavy. "This says the default amount is $12,000. It says the loan is accelerated." "He doesn't understand," Morgan sobbed. Turning to Dad. "Dad, tell them Piper is twisting this." My father looked at the papers in Mike's hand. He looked at Morgan. He looked old. "Morgan," he said, "did you put her name on the deed?" "I had to," Morgan shrieked. The truth exploded out of her because the lie had no more room to breathe. "I had to. We were going to lose the house. The rate reset and the payment doubled and Dan's bonus didn't come through, and I needed a co-borrower to qualify for the modification program. She was living there for free. It was the least she could do." The admission hit the group like a physical blow. She had admitted it. She had used me. "So you stole her identity," Aunt Linda whispered, "to get a loan?" "I was saving the family home," Morgan cried. "I did it for us. I did it for Bella." Just then, the gate unlatched. We all turned. A woman walked in. She was wearing a blazer and carrying a designer purse. It was Jessica Vance, the financial coach. She stopped, sensing the energy in the yard instantly. She looked at Morgan, then at the silent circle of family members. Am I interrupting? Jessica asked, her smile faltering. Morgan, you said to come by around 6? Morgan had invited her. She had brought backup. She had probably planned for Jessica to explain the technicalities to the family, to smooth over the misunderstanding with big words about leverage and equity. Jessica, I said. She looked at me. She didn't look happy to see me. Hi, Piper, she said, her voice cool. Long time. My attorney sent a preservation letter to your office yesterday, I said. Jessica froze. Her hand tightened on her purse strap. I'm sure you know what that means, I said. It means that if you delete any emails, or any call recordings where you pretended to be me to the hospital or the bank, it's a felony. It's spoliation of evidence. Jessica's tan face went very pale. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered. I'm just a consultant. You filed a 1099 for me, I said. For work I didn't do. To wash money for Morgan. The IRS has the affidavit now. Jessica looked at Morgan. You said she wouldn't find out. You said she was clueless. Shut up. Morgan screamed at her. Shut up, Jessica. Jessica turned around and walked out of the gate without another word. She fled. The rat was leaving the sinking ship. The silence that followed was absolute. The soft rock music seemed incredibly loud. My mother took a step forward. She was trembling. She walked over to the wicker chair where Morgan had been holding court and sat down, as if her legs could no longer hold her up. I knew, my mother said. Her voice was a whisper, but we all heard it. What did you say, Mary? My father asked. I knew, my mother repeated, covering her face with her hands. I knew she was borrowing against the house. She told me last year. She said they were in trouble. She said she was going to use Piper's income history to help with the application. She said it was just on paper. She said it wouldn't hurt anyone. I felt the ground tilt beneath my feet. You knew? I asked. Mom, you knew she put me on the mortgage? And you let her post that I was a freeloader? My mother looked up. Her face was wet with tears. I didn't want to ruin everything. Piper. Morgan has the house. She has the grandbaby. She has the life. If this came out, if Dan found out, it would all fall apart. I just wanted to keep the peace. I thought you could handle a little bad press. You're strong. Morgan is fragile. I'm strong, I repeated, so I can be the sacrifice. I didn't think it would go this far. Mom sobbed. I didn't know about the foreclosure. I looked at them. I looked at my father, who was staring at his wife with horror. I looked at Aunt Linda, who was backing away as if we were contagious. I looked at Morgan, who was standing there with her arms crossed, defiant, waiting for someone to fix it for her because someone always had. I realized then that the silence of the last 2 years wasn't confusion. It wasn't that they didn't see what Morgan was doing, it was convenience. Morgan was the golden child. Her success was the family's success. Her house was the gathering place. If she was a fraud, then the family narrative collapsed. So they let her use me as fuel. They let her burn my credit, my reputation, and my sanity, just to keep the lights on in the big house. I looked at the packet of papers in Uncle Mike's hand. You have the copies, I said. Do what you want with them. The originals are with the fraud department at Sunbelt Financial. I turned to leave. Piper! My father called out. Wait, where are you going? Home, I said. My home, the one I pay for. I walked toward the gate. If you do this, Morgan hissed. I stopped. She was standing right behind me. Her voice was a low, guttural growl. If you walk away, she said. If you let the bank take the house, if you ruin me, you will have no one. Mom won't forgive you. Dad won't forgive you. You will be alone. You will have no family. I looked at her. I looked at the woman I had protected, the woman I had served, the woman I had loved. "Morgan," I said softly, "I already don't." I walked out the gate. I walked down the street to my car. I got in. I locked the doors. I put the key in the ignition. But I didn't turn it. I sat there in the silence of the car. My hands were shaking. They were vibrating against the steering wheel. I wasn't afraid. The fear was gone. The confusion was gone. I was shaking from the grief. I was grieving the sister I thought I had. I was grieving the mother I thought I had. I was grieving the idea that if I just was good enough, if I just gave enough, if I just stayed quiet enough, they would love me. They didn't love me. They consumed me. And now, finally, I was inedible. I started the car. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. I put the car in drive and pulled away from the curb, leaving the barbecue, the house, and the lie behind me in the rearview mirror. The wheels of a bank investigation do not turn quickly, but when they finally catch traction, they grind everything in their path to dust. For 2 weeks after the barbecue, I lived in a state of suspended animation. I went to work. I came home. I stared at the wall. I didn't block my family's numbers because I wanted the record of their madness. But I didn't answer them. I let the voicemails pile up like unread newspapers on a porch. Then, on a rainy Tuesday morning, Elias called me. "Come in," he said. "We got the production packet from Sunbelt Financial." I drove to the clinic. The rain was washing the city gray, matching the color of my mood. When I sat down at Elias's desk, he didn't smile. He looked like a man who had seen a ghost, or perhaps just the ugly, unvarnished truth of human nature. "It's worse than we thought," Elias said. He opened a file. It wasn't the thin folder from before. It was thick, dense with data logs and transcripts. The lender's fraud unit pulled the IP addresses for every login, every document upload, and every electronic signature associated with the loan modification. Elias explained. They also pulled the recording of the verification call. He pushed a piece of paper toward me. "This is the log for the upload of the grant deed that put your name on the house," he said. "Look at the timestamp." I looked. October 12th, 10:45 in the morning. "Where were you on October 12th at 10:45? Elias asked. "I was at work," I said. "I clock in at 8. I don't leave until 5. "Exactly," Elias said. "And the IP address for the upload tracks back to a residential Comcast account registered to Daniel and Morgan Flores." He turned the page. "And here's the transcript of the verification call. This was the call made to confirm your identity and your income. The bank records all inbound calls for quality assurance." I read the transcript. "Agent, can you please state your full name and date of birth for the record?" Caller: "Piper Flores, March 3rd, 1992. Agent: "Thank you. Ms. Flores, and can you confirm your annual income from Elite Wealth Coaching?" Caller: "Yes, it fluctuates, but it averages about $4,500 a month." I stopped reading. I felt a cold sickness in my stomach. "That's not my voice," I said, even though I hadn't heard the audio. "I never made that call." "We know," Elias said. The bank compared the voice biometrics from that call to a call Morgan made regarding her primary mortgage 2 years ago. It's a 99% match. He leaned back in his chair. "It wasn't Jessica Vance," Elias said quietly. "Morgan didn't hire a consultant to trick her. Morgan used Jessica's company as a shell. But Morgan did the work. She logged in as you. She signed as you. She spoke as you. She didn't just borrow your credit, Piper. She wore your skin." I stared at the papers. The foreclosure notice I had received wasn't just a sign of financial failure. It was leverage. Morgan had known the foreclosure was coming. She had been trying to modify the loan for months, but she couldn't qualify on her own because her debt-to-income ratio was destroyed by the secret home equity line of credit and the car lease. She needed a co-borrower. She needed another income, but she couldn't ask Dan because Dan would see the secret debt, so she created Piper Flores. She added me to the deed to make me a legal party. Then she forged my income to make the numbers work. She was betting on one thing. She was betting that when the bank finally sent the notices, I would be too embarrassed, too weak, and too conditioned by years of gratitude to fight back. She thought I would sign her affidavit to fix it because I had always fixed everything. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," Elias said, "we go to mediation. The bank wants a sit-down before they file the official fraud report with the federal authorities. They want to see if there is a misunderstanding that can be resolved, or if they are looking at a felony. They invited Morgan. They invited us. Does she know we have this?" I asked, pointing to the logs. "No," Elias said. "She knows you are disputing it. She doesn't know we have the smoking gun. But Morgan, sensing the noose tightening, decided to fire one last shot." That night, my phone blew up. It wasn't texts. It was notifications. I opened Facebook. I hadn't looked in a week. But the preview on my lock screen was enough to tell me that Morgan had gone nuclear. She had posted a life update. It was long. It was rambly. It was accompanied by a photo of her and Bella, looking sad in the soft light of sunset. I have stayed silent for too long because I wanted to protect my family. The post began, "But when you are attacked, you have to speak your truth." I read on, my eyes scanning the paragraphs of distorted reality. 2 years ago, I took my sister in when she had nothing. I gave her a home. I fed her. I loved her. And because I wanted to help her rebuild her credit, I added her to my home title. It was a gift, a way to give her an asset so she could have a future. I thought she understood this. I thought she agreed to help with the paperwork to secure our family's future in return. But now, she has turned on me. She is claiming she knew nothing. She is threatening legal action because she is angry about being asked to move out. She is trying to take my home, my daughter's home, out of spite. It breaks my heart to realize that the person you help the most is the person who will hold the knife. It was a masterclass in Darvo. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. She had taken the truth, that she added me to the title, and twisted the motive. She wasn't using me. She was giving me an asset. I wasn't a victim. I was an ungrateful recipient who was now suing out of spite. The comments were erupting. "Unbelievable. After everything you did for her. Money changes people. Stay strong. Morgan, this is why you can't help family." I felt the familiar urge to type, to post the IP logs, to post the transcripts, to scream into the digital void. But I looked at the binder on my table. The court of public opinion doesn't have subpoena power. The court of public opinion doesn't send people to prison. I put the phone down. I didn't comment. I didn't react. Instead, I emailed the screenshot to Elias with a subject line. Exhibit G. Public admission of adding me to title. By admitting she added me to the title, even if she framed it as a gift, she had just confessed to the act itself. She had confirmed she was the one who filed the deed. She had removed her own defense of, "I don't know how that happened." The next day, Elias filed the formal motion. It was an injunction to prevent Sunbelt Financial or Morgan Flores from using my identity, income, or credit profile in any pending or future transaction. He also filed the identity theft affidavit with the Federal Trade Commission and attached it to the bank's fraud case. We didn't respond to the Facebook post. We responded with a docket number. The mediation was scheduled for Friday at the law offices representing the lender. It was a glass building downtown, far from the suburbs, far from the emotional manipulation of backyard barbecues. I wore a suit. It was a cheap suit I had bought at a discount store. But it was pressed. I pulled my hair back. I looked like a logistics manager. I looked like someone who deals in facts. Morgan arrived 10 minutes late. She was wearing the same vulnerable pastel colors she had worn to the restaurant. She had brought a lawyer, a man who looked disheveled and smelled faintly of tobacco. He wasn't a shark. He was a strip mall generalist who probably handled DUIs and divorces. Morgan didn't look at me. She looked at the table. She was crying softly before the meeting even started. The mediator was a woman named Ms. Cheng. She sat at the head of the table, the representative from the lender. A man named Mr. Henderson sat opposite her. He had a laptop and a face made of stone. We are here regarding the loan modification application for the property at 12 Oak Lane, Ms. Cheng said, and the dispute regarding the validity of the co-borrower, Ms. Piper Flores. Morgan's lawyer cleared his throat. My client would like to make a statement. Go ahead, Ms. Cheng said. Morgan looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She looked at Mr. Henderson, bypassing me entirely. I just want to say that I am so sorry for this confusion, Morgan said, her voice wobbling. I was overwhelmed. My husband and I were facing a rate adjustment, and I was terrified of losing our home. I hired a financial coach, a woman named Jessica Vance, to help me. I trusted her. She told me that because Piper lived with us, we could include her on the application to help the numbers. She said it was standard. She said she would handle the paperwork. Morgan sniffed, wiping her nose with a tissue. I thought Piper knew, she continued. I thought she agreed. When I saw the paperwork, I just signed what Jessica told me to sign. If mistakes were made, it was because I was misled by a professional. I never meant to hurt my sister. I was just trying to save my family. It was a good story. It shifted the blame to Jessica, the absent villain, and painted Morgan as the naive victim of a predatory consultant. It relied on the idea that Morgan was too stupid to commit fraud. Mr. Henderson didn't blink. He typed something on his laptop. Mrs. Flores, Mr. Henderson said, you claim that Miss Vance handled the application? Yes, Morgan said. She did everything online. And the signature on the deed? Mr. Henderson asked. The one transferring interest to Piper Flores? Jessica brought it to me to sign, Morgan lied. She said she would get Piper's signature. Elias leaned forward. He didn't speak. He just slid a single piece of paper across the polished mahogany table. It was the cost breakdown Morgan had written on the yellow legal pad at the restaurant. The list of how much I owed her. What is this? Morgan's lawyer asked, frowning. This is a handwritten document my client received from Morgan Flores 3 weeks ago. Elias said, it is a list of alleged expenses. Elias then slid a transparent overlay on top of it. It was a blow-up of the forged signature from the grant deed. If you look at the capital P in Piper on the deed, Elias said, his voice conversational, and you compare it to the capital P in the word payment on this handwritten note, you will see a distinct idiosyncrasy. The loop of the P does not close. It floats. It is identical. Morgan went still. And, Elias continued, if we look at the capital F in Flores on the deed, and the capital F in food on the note, the crossbar is slanted downward at a 45-degree angle. It is a perfect match. Elias looked at Morgan. Jessica Vance didn't write this note. Did she? Morgan? You wrote this in front of witnesses at O'Malley's restaurant. Morgan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Furthermore, Mr. Henderson chimed in, looking at his screen. Our IP logs show that the deed was uploaded from your home IP address, not a corporate office, and the device ID matches an iPhone registered to Morgan Flores. Mr. Henderson turned the laptop around so Morgan could see the log. And finally, Mr. Henderson said, we have the recording. He pressed a key. A voice filled the room. It was tinny, distorted by the phone line, but undeniable. My income fluctuates, but it averages about $4,500 a month. It was Morgan's voice. It wasn't Jessica's. Jessica had a distinct nasal twang. Morgan had a low, husky register, and she was using phrases she used all the time. Fluctuates. Averages. Morgan's lawyer looked at her. He looked at the evidence. He closed his folder. Can we have a sidebar? He asked. His voice defeated. No, Mr. Henderson said. We are past the point of sidebars. This is an application submitted with knowingly false information. Supported by forged instruments and identity theft. This is bank fraud. It is wire fraud. The room went cold. The air conditioning hummed, sounding like a distant siren. The bank is rescinding the loan modification offer immediately. Mr. Henderson said, we are accelerating the underlying mortgage and the HELOC. The foreclosure will proceed against Morgan and Daniel Flores. However, we are removing Piper Flores from the proceedings as a victim of fraud. He looked at me. Ms. Flores, we will require you to sign an affidavit confirming this is not your voice and not your signature. Once that is done, your name will be cleared from the title and the debt. I will sign it, I said. As for you, Mrs. Flores. Mr. Henderson said to Morgan, we are required by federal law to file a suspicious activity report, or SAR. This evidence will be turned over to the authorities. What they do with it is up to them. Morgan made a sound like a dying animal. It was a high, keen whimper. You can't, she whispered. I have a daughter. You can't send me to jail. Please, I'll pay it back. I'll sell the house. You don't have a choice about selling the house. Mr. Henderson said coldly, the foreclosure is active. The meeting was over. The lawyer stood up. Papers were shuffled. Morgan sat there, frozen. Her performance had shattered. The confused mom act didn't work on algorithms and handwriting analysis. I stood up. I felt light. I felt like I'd been carrying a backpack full of stones for 2 years, and someone had just cut the straps. I walked toward the door. Piper. It was a whisper. I stopped. I turned around. Morgan was looking at me. Her face was stripped of all its masks. There was no anger, no martyrdom, just a raw, terrifying hollowness. She looked at me like I was a stranger who had walked in off the street and stabbed her. You ruined me, she whispered. You actually did it. You ruined me. She truly believed it. In her mind, the crime wasn't the theft, or the forgery, or the betrayal. The crime was the exposure. The crime was that I had refused to be the cushion that broke her fall. I looked at her, and I felt a strange, final pity, not the kind that makes you go back, but the kind that allows you to leave without looking back. You ruined you, I said softly. I just stopped carrying it. I walked out of the room. I walked down the long hallway, past the reception desk, and out into the bright, blinding sunlight of the city street. The fallout was immediate and messy, but it happened at a distance, like watching a demolition from a safe observation deck. Morgan and Dan lost the house. The foreclosure went through 3 months later. They moved into a rental condo in a cheaper town. I heard through the grapevine that Dan was furious, that he claimed he knew nothing about the HELOC or the fraud. But he stayed. Codependency is a powerful glue. The criminal charges were filed. But because it was a first offense and she paid restitution by liquidating her retirement account, she avoided prison, she got probation, she got a record, she got the shame she had tried so hard to assign to me. But the family didn't rally around the truth. They rallied around the pain. A week after the mediation, I got a text from Aunt Linda. I hope you're happy. Morgan is devastated. She made mistakes, but she is family. You didn't have to take it this far. You could have handled this privately. We are splitting holidays this year. I think it's best if you don't come to Easter. I read the text. You could have handled this privately. That was the epitaph of my family. Handle it privately. Absorb the abuse. Pay the debt. Swallow the lie. Keep the image intact. They were blaming me for the fire because I was the one who pulled the alarm. I didn't reply. I deleted the thread. I blocked Aunt Linda. I walked into my apartment. It was 6 months since I had moved out of Morgan's house. The apartment was small. It was just a 1-bedroom with a view of a brick wall and a fire escape. But it was mine. My credit report was clean. The inquiries were gone. The fake income was scrubbed from the IRS records. The debt collectors had stopped calling. I sat on the floor in the living room. I had just bought a new rug. It was blue. I paid for it with money I earned from a new job. A better job. At a logistics firm that valued detail-oriented people who kept good records. I looked around the room. There were no pictures of my family on the walls. There were no live, laugh, love signs. There was no performance. I picked up a book I had been meaning to read for years. I opened it. The silence in the room wasn't empty. It was full. It was full of possibility. I thought about Morgan, trapped in her narrative of victimhood, telling anyone who would listen about her evil sister who stole her house. I thought about my mother, drinking wine and pretending everything was fine. I was the villain in their story. I would always be the villain in their story. And I realized, sitting there in the patch of sunlight on my cheap blue rug, that I didn't care. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their forgiveness. I didn't need to be the good sister anymore. I was free. I closed my eyes and breathed in the smell of old paper and fresh coffee. It smelled like the truth, and the truth, I discovered, was the only luxury worth paying for. This concludes the story of Piper Flores. Thank you so much for reading along with this journey of reclamation and boundaries. It is a hard truth that sometimes the people who demand our loyalty are the ones utilizing our silence. I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Have you ever had to draw a hard line with family to protect your own future? Please consider subscribing to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice, resilience, and the long road to truth. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. Stay safe, and remember, keep your receipts.